President Bola Tinubu has declared that individuals involved in kidnapping must be treated as terrorists. The president made this declaration on Tuesday at a Ramadan dinner with members of the federal judiciary, led by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Olukayode Ariwoola. President Tinubu says those who resort to kidnapping children are cowards and incapable of confronting the might of the Nigerian Armed Forces. Now, this development is following the recent incident in Kuriga, Kaduna State, where about 137 students were kidnapped and later regained their freedom.
We are working hard. Yes, the bandits, just please uphold our resolve when we say kidnappers are terrorists and don't rule against us. That's the way we perceive them. That is the way we must treat them. And that is a fact that we are facing currently, unless we take very strong action against these people. They become cowardly, they have been degraded, they look for soft targets, they go to backyard of, local schools, kidnap children and create disaffection. We must treat them equally as terrorists in order to really get rid of them. And I promise you, we're going to get rid of them.
Now, joining us in the studio to talk about the president's statements is lawyer and social development advocate Olutobosun Oshifowora. It's good to see you again.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Happy to be here.
Welcome to the breakfast show on TVC. Right. So earlier on, the president's predecessor, Muhammadu Buhari, also, said something in that light, talking about treat kidnappers as terrorists. And many states, we've seen many states also upgrading their laws on anti-kidnapping, so to speak. No more life sentence. In many states now, it's now if you get, a guilty verdict, it's now a death sentence. But with the president's statements now, what do you think?
Well, if you look at the spate of kidnappings and how much is gone on the increase, and it's literally become an industry which has made most states and even the federal government look somewhat incompetent in protecting the lives and properties of the citizens, which is the primary purpose for which they're there. Now, so if you look at that, in that context, it is necessary for the government to declare a state of emergency in that regard and come up with something stiffer, because you find that this was something we never knew in this country. All of a sudden, at some point, it just started and then it became a big thing. And you now have it at all levels, both at the local, at the state level. And, it's become a big thing. It's become a monster. And it has to be dealt with seriously. So the way we used to handle it should differ from how we will go about it now. If something has become an industry, then you have to tackle it headlong. And I think that's a welcome development from the president. Though if you look at most states, most states are changing the laws because almost every day, at some point, I could say for free, in my office, we had to sit down and look at it that, there are some states we can't do some interstate briefs again. So we had to look for people there to help us with the briefs, because traveling outside your enclave became almost difficult and impossible. And I mean, you wake up scared, you read the news. Kidnapping is literally in your face.
Front burner headlines.
Everywhere. So, and I think the government has seen this, and what the president has said is the right thing. Though some people are already, gearing towards going beyond even life sentences for ordinary kidnapping to, because, by laws, I mean, if I can explain that, what happens is most laws states that when you are found guilty of kidnapping, you get between 15 to 30 years, life imprisonment. That's the highest you have. But over time, they realize that this thing has become something very lucrative for some people, and then the harm and the danger is causing to the states and the citizens. Some states started coming up with the death sentence thing, and that will be some form of abhorrent to most people engage in the trade. So for the president to really come out and say that, treat these people as terrorists. You know who terrorists are. We know how the law operates with terrorists. So it's best you just put it in the same, bracket. And then maybe that will deter the people in it. I mean, that will curb a lot of things. A lot of people engage in the whole kidnapping thing.
Okay, so we see that when there's a insecurity issue in any part of the country, the governor runs to the president. We've seen that over time, even recently. Now, do we put together a legislation whereby states as well can help handle security issues in their state, in issues of kidnappings and all of that, banditry, in their own state, rather than go to the federal government, because it seems like the government is quite overwhelmed with handling these issues?
Well, there is supposed to be some tweak to our legislation, but if you look at it, over time, I think recently there's this clamor, and it's almost becoming a reality, something you can touch, where they're talking about state policing. Policing has always been under the exclusive list for the federal government. And so, in as much as the governor is the chief security officer of the state, the fact that the state has a police commissioner doesn't mean that they defer 100% to the governor. They still take, instructions from a higher point than the chief security officer of the state. So that's why you find when things almost get out of hand in most states, the best place to go is to go to the federal government and seek help. It's not only peculiar to Nigeria. There are instances even in the U.S. when some security issues get out of hand, you call on the federal troop to come and step in. It's a normal thing. It's one of the characteristics of a federation, which is fine. But with state policing, I think there will be less of, running helter-skelter. The state governor can actually put together a team and say, this is what we want to do, and then come up with definite security positions.
But with what we have now for the federal police, do you think the state police will have jurisdiction over some matters?
Definitely, there will be legislations. If you don't, where there are no laws, there are no sins, and then there will be clashes. Even if you look abroad, some of the movies you see where
FBI
will
takes
clash
over,
with CIA, and something, it's a federal thing, and like that. There will be teething problems when the state police issue starts. But over time, I think the laws will clear it, and things will get better. It's the idea that the general idea is what we should really look at and vote for. Is the fact that the federal police is stretched. And then there's a need, because with the spate of crime, every day you wake up to news of heinous activities, and you just wonder, when is this thing going to stop? And if you look at the United Nations position on policing, there's a police to a certain number of persons. We don't even fall within that bracket. I think at the last count, the Nigerian police has in its employ about less than 400,000, 400,000 policemen to 200 million. It's a far cry from what it is. So definitely something needs to be done at the state level. And though, like I said, there will be teething problems, the teething problem is not just going to be clashes between the federal police and the state police, no. Before now, with all sense of responsibility, security funds have been on the front burner. People always questioning, now those security funds will be put to judicious use, because you cannot have a police that you will not equip. You're not going to give people sticks or gadgets that won't define what they're doing. So the governors will really have to put their security votes to proper use now, and not that one that everybody keeps questioning.
Right.
This time around, you will have to equip your people, and it is the quality of police that you have that will determine the quality of security that you will have in your state.
How will you qualify the level of deterrence that, this classification of, putting
Yes.
kidnappers into the same category as terrorists? In what form of deterrence do you think this will bring, to curb the spate of this crime?
All right. Now, basically, if you look at terrorism, it's in almost every part of the world. The punishment for terrorism is death. Now, so if you put kidnappers in the same bracket, that means that the punishment for kidnapping, whether you just feel, there are some local, like I said, kidnapping has taken different dimensions where people, not even the ones who feign it now, in fact, I was in court 2 days ago and some dispatch rider was kidnapped. I was in court in Shagam, and the case was on before my case was called, and they were demanding 2 million. We saw some people that were demanding like 1 trillion. It has taken dimensions. So you have local kidnappers, you have state kidnappers, you have, let's just put it like, those who kidnap at the federal level. Some deal with the state, some deal with families, some deal. So, and you see one.
Sorry, I'm intrigued. In that case, so the kidnappers or the alleged kidnappers are on trial?
They're on trial.
Oh,
5 of them.
great.
They were caught.
Right.
So they demanded just, I think, 1.5 million. So those ones are local.
Petty.
They are the petty kidnappers. Okay. But the guy was held for days, according to his testimony, because the trial was on. So I was interested, and I'm like, wow, so they do it at this very, they don't...
And still got to pay the ransom.
Well, the police came in and they salvaged the
Great.
situation, but the guy was there for a couple of days.
Right.
Now, so basically what it is that all those levels, if you know that I want to get 1.5 million from this family, let me kidnap their son. By the time you look at it, most people who go for crime don't look at the punishment. They don't look at the downside. You just feel by the time we do A and B, we'll just cash out.
The calculation.
If you miscalculate and it doesn't follow, if your calculation follow through, then you know that it's debt. So if you look at 1.5 million to debt, you will recalibrate and possibly go about your legitimate business, because once you find yourself in the same bracket as terrorists, and let me quickly give this example. A couple of years ago, there was a young man who was involved in electoral malpractice. He went to snap ballots about 10, 15 years ago in my area. So he was caught and arraigned in court the Monday following the thing. So when they announced his name, they just mentioned his name, Adebola something, I can't mention his surname, versus Federal Republic of Nigeria. When he had Federal Republic of Nigeria, he screamed that,
dawned on him.
Federal Republic of Nigeria, what did I do? He didn't know the gravity of so he just realized that I'm facing Nigeria. I'm not, election that happened in Surulere here, me and Nigeria. So that's the way it is. When people realize that this thing is not just come and chop, it is serious thing. If you kidnap for just 1 million, you are caught, or you finish spending your 1 million and you are facing death penalty, that's enough.
Sorry, but these guys do not seem to care. They're asking for 1 trillion naira and some bikes and all of that to release the girls in. They don't seem to care about the repercussions. They just want to get the money and move on. Does it seem that the law does not really work or something?
The law works. But you see, one of the things, if you look at the Terrorism Prevention Act of 2020, it says that the Office of the National Security Advisor is supposed to be involved in serious intelligence gathering. Now, one of the things that, no disrespect to the security outfits in Nigeria, but I think there's a whole lot of, there's a slack in intelligence gathering. Because sometimes, how do you justify, set of army officers walking into an ambush like that? What happened to intelligence gathering? How do you justify people packing 250 school children? It's not like they pick them here and put them in the next room. No.
No.
They had time, they had hours to work through certain terrains and all of that. So for me, I think a lot has to do with intelligence gathering. So in curbing it, the death sentence is one thing, but the office of the NSA also need to up its game, because in all of this, it's a holistic thing and it's comprehensive. It's not just punishment. Now, you don't wait for crimes to be committed before you now say, okay, because it's death sentence, we will kill all of them. That's just one part of trying to curb, kidnapping and terrorism in the country. A major thing they have to do is intelligence gathering.
Absolutely.
I know they're stretched, but they need to come up with something better than this. We saw what happened in Russia. You saw the whole shooting over the weekend, and the guys were apprehended same day. Here we will first announce, we will set up a committee, and so all those things we need to.
And many of these states also, kind of compartmentalize what should end a death sentence if a guilty verdict in a case of kidnapping, because looking at some of these laws, they say if the act of kidnapping results in the death of someone, then such a defendant will, when found guilty, will be sentenced to death. Do you agree that that should be kept the way it is, or do we generalize now?
That is the formal law or position of the law or extant law in some states. What the president is saying and what everybody is advocating
generally now.
Generally, once you kidnap people, because you see, there's the physical death in some cases. Then some people never get over the trauma, what they go through. I've had instances where some people, a friend told me about someone who they've been looking for a child. The child was kidnapped by a maid, and then like a 4-year-old, eventually, only God knows what they fed the child. The child eventually died days after the rescue. Ransom was paid and all that. So, so at that point, you say the child was rescued alive, but days after the child died, what do you make of that? So whether the victim died in their custody or days after, it doesn't matter. The fact is that let's stamp kidnapping with death sentence. Any form of kidnapping, whether local, petty, or at the international level, let's make sure that we put in a big stamp on it so that will deter people and actually stop people from looking at this thing as a viable trade. Because if we don't come up with something drastic in that regard, people will see that they're already seeing it as a normal thing. Everybody gets, at some point we were sectionalizing it. The certain ethnic groups were the ones involved in this thing. Now it's pervasive. It's everywhere. Every ethnic involved in it. Some don't even stay in their enclave. They move from place to place. So, this is something that if the government is serious, like the president came out to say, which we know he's the man of his words, I think all legislators need to come rally around the president, what he has said, and put a stamp on it. You kidnap, you go for the big one. It's capital offense and final.
Another implication to all of this is, so what will happen to our correctional facilities that are already brimming with first awaiting trial inmates and then people on the death row that, they've been on the death row for years, and no governor has had the courage or the political will now to sign what's the word now, execution order.
Execution order.
So to what purpose will a death sentence?
I wouldn't say I don't know why governors are not signing the execution order. It's death has a way death has a negative connotation. So, and you don't want to be labeled, most governors don't want to be the executioner governor. But you see, I think it's time that people came up with definite positions on this. If people have been sentenced to death, why are they feeding on the nation's resources? Because you see, sometimes, time is the healer of wounds. Most times when people commit crime, at that point, everybody is fired up, everybody, livid with rage. But after a while, you just look at it, and we're very religious. God give it, God take care, leave him, let him go, all those things. We should be serious. Because once people, we grew up, I know we on this panel were were not Gen Zs, were children of the 70s and 80s.
Right.
And I remember in the 80s when, you know, they used to do the firing.
Right, at the
thing.
beaches.
Yes, at the beaches, yes.
And you know the one parents will give you that, don't steal, oh, if you do, you see what happened to, and you just want to face your book. So that's some people have argued that death sentence is not a deterrent in itself. But, well, it's an argument which could be plausible or otherwise. But I am afraid of death. You're afraid of death. Nobody wants to die. So if you put it there and it's hanging there, I can tell you that a larger percentage of people who would have thought about kidnapping as a viable business would think twice and turn back. So you have gotten some repentance from there. So, I mean, you have less people involved, I mean, willing to get involved in things like that. So death sentence for me, it's a good one. And then the governors too should step up. By the time they kill 1 or 2, 3 persons, maybe some of those younger people who are beginning to look in that direction would think twice.
If you were a governor of your state, will you sign a death warrant?
I will sign it.
Exactly. Why?
It's my brother, let me
Because
tell you
maybe because you're not a politician, because a lot of politicians look at the next 4 years, campaigns and all of that, to get into office. So do you want that hovering over your head?
I say this with all sense of responsibility. You see, most of the people in politics, they don't have a second address. When I say second address, majority of those people who we find in politics, they don't have something tangible they were doing before. If I did one time, Jack Wendy did one time, he did that. The second time didn't really kick off. So, but you cannot erase what Jack Wendy has done in this Nigeria, not even Lagos. Now, so the fact is this, I practice, I work, I have my firm, I have other things I do. If I'm governor today, I will do all that is necessary, all right? If I don't come back again, I go back to my practice.
At the expense of them calling you executional governor?
The fact is, did I do it? Was it within my portfolio to do? Yes. Did the law allow me to do it? Yes. Did I contravene the law? No. Did I do something that will curb interest or that will curb the intentions of would-be criminals? Yes. Have I saved the society? Yes. If one time, is one time a death sentence? No. If you do one time, go, let some other persons come in. So I don't see why governors wouldn't sign it. If I happen to be a governor, though I don't, but if I found myself there, sincerely speaking, I would do it. Because I'm not doing it for political reasons. I'm doing it because I want to stamp something in the minds of would-be criminals. Death is a deterrence, no matter the argument. It's a deterrent. It will stop people. Because if you know that if I do this, there are wires here that you won't touch. Because you know that it will change your space in seconds. So definitely you will move back. It's the same thing with crime and death sentence. If you know this is what it carries, if it's prison, people will go and come back. But if you know it's death sentence, you will rethink.
Right. But, you know, we're winding down on the interview, but if we look at the challenges lingering in the justice system, you know, the long, inordinate delays, you know, to go so far in a case, the appeal stages and all of that, and then the shoddy investigations of, you know, police officers and all of that. Are you convinced that, you know, because many people, especially in the category of restorative justice advocates, will say, you know, that is not the way to go. Nigeria should go the extra mile to, you know, remove the death sentence from her laws because of the gaps that are still lingering in the system. What's your take?
Well, it's for us to step up our game. If you look at that interview, I mean, the address by the president, I read further, you know, he was talking to the CJ and the rest of the judiciary generally. And he talked about, you know, the difficulties that the judiciary is facing with record keeping and all that. And he even said that there's a proposal before the National Assembly for 300%
upward review,
you know, in the salary and all that. I know the president is serious. And we saw what he did with judiciary, how he transformed judiciary in Lagos. And I know that he's trying to replicate same at the federal level. And I trust the president. I believe in his government. And I know that he will definitely do what is needful. But really, the judiciary needs a lot of help, and we won't stop advocating that until we actually get it. I know the biggest room in the world is room for improvement.
True.
We will definitely improve, and at the end of the day, the country will be the better for it.
All right, Olutubosun Oshifowora, that would be a fine place to leave it. I note that you are the hopeful, saying that this will deter criminals. And yes, we indeed hope for a safer country for the good of, everyone, at least the good people of the country. Thank you very much for your contributions.
Always a